I'll tell you what, when I lived in Orlando, if you know Billy Gunn, he was like a local guy who was around Orlando training, and him and Bart were the whatever they were at the time. They were
smoking guns.
Yeah, the smoking. Well, it was before they were in. It was before they were in New York. It was when
Are they
were doing
from
local
Florida?
Stuff.
Is Billy from Monty, whatever his name is? He's from Florida.
Yeah. So many wrestlers live around here. It's kind of cool, actually. I'm a huge wrestling fan, so that's why I'm very excited about this movie. Though it's actually one of those concepts about zombies and wrestlers. Well, I'm surprised. I never thought of it, or anyone else has thought of this. So let's talk about how this got put together.
Cool. Yeah, for sure.
Who wants to start?
All right, Chris.
Mike, you or me? You
can do it.
You decide.
No, you.
All right. So, Mike and I were both professional wrestlers. Mike started something like 30 years ago.
Early of 1990.
Okay, yeah, and I was about 25 years ago. So, as luck would have it, Mike was one of the first guys I met when I started training, and he had been in the business for a while. We were both at a place called Windy City Wrestling at the time. And to make a really long story even longer, I used to watch Windy City when I was in college. I'd run home from my bouncing job at midnight to watch it on the Sports Channel, because it was back then, it was a pretty big deal. There were probably, it was like WWF, NWA, AWA. And then after that, Windy City was one of the bigger promotions. As a matter of fact, like Paulie Dangerously got his start there. Was one of his first places he worked. God, who was there?
Punk. He was later on.
Well, he was a Chicago guy, but not at Windy City.
I thought he worked for Sam for a while.
I was going to ask. I thought he was there too, but maybe I'm wrong.
No, he was never there, because he was in Chicago the same time I was. We were almost exactly the same time. He worked for a company called the LWF. But Christopher Daniels,
I forgot about that.
If you know Chris Daniels, he's the
Fallen Angel
AEW shirt. Yeah, he's the director of talent now for AEW. Was a big indie star.
He did his very first match against me.
Yeah.
Really?
Yes. Right. So, but guys came through there like Bam Bam Bigelow and Bruiser Brody and Abdullah the Butcher. I mean, guys who were really big when Mike and I were there.
Ken Patera, Kurt Hennig, Iron Sheik.
Yeah, I mean,
Kurt Hennig.
I used to wrestle Greg Valentine and Ernest Beefcake and all those guys.
Dirty Dick Murdoch.
Keep these names coming. I'm loving this.
Yeah. So I mean, let's see. I worked Typhoon, Tatanka. Just, I mean, you name it. It was we'd have one spot guys. So that actually, as luck would have it, when I was coming in, Mike was leaving. And Mike was in a group called the Brotherhood that was the Manson Brothers, and he was already Skull Manson. And so he had suggested to the guys that they take me on as his replacement, and I came on and became Stone Manson. So, fast forward many, many years later, I was in this really small independent film. It was a Frankenstein movie that was shot in Chicago, and Mike is watching movies one day with a buddy of his who was a screen projectionist and happened to be
like, hey, these idiots left this DVD here. Do you want to watch this movie? And I'm like, sure, put it on.
So I get a text, or I don't even remember, it was a text or a phone call, but it was basically like, are you in a Frankenstein movie? And I hadn't seen Mike since his bachelor party, which was like a decade before that.
Wow.
And I'm like, yeah, why? And he's like, I'm watching it right now. No way. So,
is that movie online anywhere? I mean, that sounds cool. Frankenstein
it
movie.
Is. And it's actually good. I liked it, but he's good in it. Well, that's what struck me. I'm like, hey, this guy's really good. I'm like, man, he looks really familiar, because he had, when in the movie, he doesn't have long hair. And like when I met him, he had long hair and he's a little heavier and younger. And, I hadn't seen him for a long time. So I'd be like trying to put face to name. And I'm like, I'm telling my buddy, I'm like, hey man, this looks like a guy I know. This looks like a friend of mine. He goes, oh yeah, you know everybody. I'm like,
but it actually was.
Yeah.
So fast forward a few years from there, and then Mike was in a TV show called Crisis with the guy who ultimately was going to direct our film, Max Martini. So Mike came out to LA to visit him and called me, and I had moved to Los Angeles in the meantime, and he's like, hey, come hang out with us. The next day, there were some shenanigans involved, but the next day his flight gets canceled, and he calls me and he's like, I got to talk to you, let's put together this idea. And so we got together, and like, that was the genesis of the Manson Brothers. And so a few of the things that we really took from it, when you see the film, there's a lot of independent wrestling kind of behind the curtain, stuff that we talk about. And a lot of that came from having worked with these guys who were superstars in the WWF, who then later on in their careers would come down and do shows, and they were the guy that sold the show, right? It was like, oh, hey, here's Greg the Hammer Valentine. And then everybody would show up to see him. And then hopefully they would like us, and the next year we'd come back.
Yeah. I just went to one recently, and Gangrel was like the headliner. But like,
there you go.
I had no idea who the other people are, but I was very entertained though, showing up though.
Yeah, sure. Wow. Well, I think
he has a wrestling school in Miami. Yeah.
Does he have a training center in Miami now?
Yeah. It's called the Gangrel Asylum. So yeah.
Does he really? Good for him.
So yeah, I got the interview with him. This was like a couple months ago.
I wish they would have done more with him.
Yeah, that was basically, again, very long, how we came up with the concept, and then really,
I love that.
From there, we started where we were going to be wearing masks the entire film, basically, until the very end, because in the movie industry, nobody knows who we are, and so we needed a gimmick to get over. Yeah, exactly, and we needed a gimmick to get over. With two guys who no one knows who the leads are, right? So it kind of started with that concept.
Yeah.
What really catapulted it was getting together with Max, who has been in the business for so long and was able to put guys around us.
Yeah, he worked on Pacific Rim. That's pretty impressive having him on board.
Yeah, I mean, you name it, Pacific Rim, 13 hours. The guy's been in everything.
Phillips, 50 Shades of Grey movies. He's got one coming out with George Clooney. The guy, he's a great actor. He's a great director.
That's the thing. He's worked with so many huge directors, that it was like he's just gathered this wealth of knowledge, and it really took this little concept, from kind of our little, really small budget movie into a bigger small budget movie. But he made it great. He really was the catalyst for for making it what it is.
Speaking of someone else that's big, it's in the movie is Randy Couture. I mean, how did you land him? I mean, that's a
great story. So Randy is friends with Max so Randy has a veterans charity called the Extreme Couture GI Foundation, which I strongly recommend everybody go visit and donate to, because it's a really wonderful charity for veterans. I'm a veteran myself.
Thank you.
And Max, my honor. Thank you for your support. Max does a lot for veterans. Like, he gives a lot of his time and a lot of his personal money, and has charities of his own. And so they knew each other through there. And I think Randy was on a couple episodes of The Unit when Max was on there, and that's how they got together. But I ran into Randy several times over a decade-long period, and met him in passing, but had never actually talked to him. And I, in fact, sat 2 seats over from him at the 13 Hours premiere, because we both were there to support Max, and we never really spoke to each other. And then when he came on the set, I told him this story about how my wife was a big fan, and we were in Vegas watching, it was Kevin James, and Randy was a couple of people behind us, and she really wanted to take a picture of them. So I went up, and he was very gracious and did it. So I told him the story, and he goes, I remember that. And I'm like, you do not. He goes, no, man, I remember that. I remember you coming up to me, because nobody else really stopped me, and this and that. And I thought it was a really, really cool story. And then later on, he's like, how weird is that happened, and how we wound up to be really close, and da-da-da. And I'm like, well, it's funny, because I went back and told my wife, I said, I know this is going to sound weird, but I'm going to be friends with this guy. I'm going to be very close friends with this guy. I don't know how, I don't know why, but it's going to be that way. And as it turned out, when Chris and I were writing the script, the character he plays, now we didn't know Randy, and Max was not involved. And we said, who would be really good for this character? Randy Couture, because he could really relate to like being an aging tough guy. Now, obviously the character that he plays is different from him, but in essence, I'm getting older. I'm going through it myself, being an aging, I was a fighter and a bouncer and all this other kind of crap. So it's really it's a difficult thing as you get older to, like, you start to lose your edge a little bit, and younger guys don't really see you as a tough guy anymore and whatever. So it was a really good fit for him. And so Max called him, and we were really lucky to get him. And if you've seen Randy Couture in the Expendables, and you've seen him in some other stuff, but you have not seen him like you will see him in this, and he is awesome. He's really great.
I can't wait to see it. By the way, it's going to arrive September 10th, everybody. Just to let it out there in theaters and on demand. Go ahead.
I think just to add on to what Mike was saying, I think we were really lucky because it was such a departure from everything else that Randy had done before that I think it really interested in him. And I think ultimately that was kind of the hook that got him on board, because it's comedic and it's a horror film. And he, those are things he hadn't really done. And thank God, because, he's been not only just absolutely one of the nicest human beings you'd ever want to meet. But he's just been great for the film. He's been very supportive, and it's just been fantastic.
And there's a scene in there at the beginning of the movie where him and Chris are playing cards, and it's absolutely hysterical. It's so funny. And which brings me to our other resident badass in the film, Bas Rutten, who's another former UFC champ, Pride champion, Pancrase champion, one of the baddest guys you'll ever meet in your life, and also again one of the nicest, funniest, and one of my closest friends now, him and Randy both, and I'm just very lucky to have him in the movie. And he is in a scene that everybody loves. I'm not going to give it away, but he tells a story about a parrot, and it's hysterical, and he's hysterical. And originally he didn't say that speech, and after he came on the movie, Chris and I were talking, and Chris is like, who killed that speech? Bas would kill that speech. He's like, let's give it to him. I'm like, all right. So we threw it by Max, and Max is like, I don't know. But once he rehearsed it one time, we were like, oh my God, it's hilarious. And everybody that watches the movie loves that part. And he just kills it. He's so good in it. And
little known fact, Bas was also a professional wrestler for a while in Japan.
Oh, really?
So he spent a good amount of time in the ring as well. So
is there any other wrestlers maybe not well known that are in this that maybe you're just friends with that you brought in that people should know about?
Well, we did actually. Yeah, there's some local guys from Albuquerque that we enlisted to help us out, and they run a regular circuit there. Max called it backyard wrestling, but that's not correct. They do a regular independent circuit there, and they run from Santa Fe to Amarillo, and Jacob and Chris, and they came in, and although our stunt coordinator Freddie Joe Farnsworth liked to give everybody nicknames, so Jacob was Pocahontas and Chris was Fish because he has a lot of facial piercings. But these guys came in, and some of their friends as well, and helped us train the other two actors that Chris and I actually do a match with. And if you know anything about wrestling, for those of you who are, have pulled the curtain back a little bit, it's not that easy to learn. And it's not that easy to do, but A, making it look good, and B, not killing yourself or somebody else. And they were really invaluable in the thing. And they also play zombies in the movie, which was great. And they let us toss them around, and they were very gracious.
That's gonna be so much fun, playing a zombie and playing a wrestler. That's like two of my favorite things.
Oh yeah,
I can't wait to see this movie.
If you want to look them up, Jacob is the bearded lady, and Chris is Mr. Happy.
Mr. Happy, yeah.
Mr. Happy. It's TAH Happy. Yeah, and they're both.
Yeah, they were both really good workers, and good guys to have around. They were invaluable to have, especially for bumping them around when they were zombies. We hadn't
gotten into the ring in like 15 years or something like that. So that
it had been 18 years for me. So it was a long.
What was it like taking your first bump?
Oh my God! And the ring was so stiff. We bought this ring because we needed a big ring. Like usually a show ring isn't this big. So we got one that's 20 by 20, right?
So maybe you could have the film crew in there with it.
Yeah, so get the cameras in there and have enough room to move around. And there's some scenes with the zombies in the ring too. So we needed a little bit of a bigger ring. I mean, they do come that way, but usually you'll just see them for bigger shows. But anyway, we built the ring, and it was so stiff. But the problem with it was when you ran the ropes, the ring would bounce. And so if you took a bump off the ropes, like to take a clothesline, the ring would come up to meet you. And it was it was horrendous.
It was terrible.
Terrible. Me and him are pushing 50 at the time, and we're like, but the show must.
I think for wrestling fans out there, the funniest story I don't know, it wasn't funny for us, but the funniest story was, we had practiced prior to filming just to kind of get, work the ring rust out a little bit. But we come in and we've got a full crowd in there. And so we run through the first rehearsal with full crowd and everybody making noise. And, And we ran that first match, and it was like, you know, we both felt great. It was like, oh my God, we're back in the ring. The crowd's going crazy. All this kind of stuff.
Let's do it again.
Then we had to turn around and do it like 6 more times with no crowd noise. So it was just working the match, the same match every time. And I mean, by the end, I was dingy. I asked if somebody could give me a ride back to San Francisco, and we were going to Santa Fe. So,
and then, you know, the other thing too was we took some really hard bumps and some really good ones, and for whatever reason, those didn't make it into the cut of the film.
I was gonna ask, you know, right?
Or whatever. So when you see the bumps, they're not like, they look good, but they're not the best ones we took. And we were like, good darn it. You know, we literally got hurt doing it. So
yeah, the toughest bumps didn't make it, unfortunately.
Well, I got all the respect. As a huge wrestling fan, I got all the respect for wrestlers. You put your bodies on the line, and a lot of them, like, you know, they got problems later on in life, you know, and
I got them now.
You don't make a lot of money even, like,
when I was a kid,
passion, you know?
When I was a kid, when I broke in, we wrestled with Colonel De Beers. And I don't know if anybody remembers Colonel De Beers. He was big in the AWA at the time. Okay, so Colonel De Beers, we were having a conversation in the locker room. I think maybe it was my first match or something. And I asked him, I'm like, his name was Eddie. And I'm like, Eddie, you know, do you have a lot of injuries from working? And he goes, kid, nobody walks away from wrestling free. And I'm like, boy, and the older I get, the more that statement holds true, because you write a lot of checks during that time that your body doesn't cash till later on. You know, you start getting up there, you know, we're in our 50s now, and it's like every morning you get up and you're like, oh yeah, that was that match against so-and-so. And oh yeah, that's when I took a 6-pack off the top rope. And, you know, that's when I threw myself into the first row of seats because I thought it would look cool, you know, or I thought I was going to catch it.
It does look cool. I'm sure it feels terrible later, you know, but man, as a fan, we love it. So.
But it was fun as hell. I don't regret it. It was so fun. We had such a good time doing wrestling with Windy City. And, you know, I want to shout out Sam DeCero, who was the promoter for Windy City at the time. And, you know, he gave us both our start, and he was awesome. He was just a great guy to work for. And he was a former wrestler himself. So that was just a really fun time in our lives. And I broke in when the territories were still around. So you still had Yeah, I mean, that was kind of cool. They were starting to fade, but you could still go other places and make money before that all broke down. So I was really fortunate. And I had a guy named John Richmond, who's one of my best friends, who was Eli the Eliminator down in the UWF and WCCW days. And he kind of took me under his wing and taught me a lot about the business and introduced me to guys like Luger and the Steiners and Sting and all these guys one time. And that was, as a young guy, you know, being with those guys. I met Dick the Bruiser, you know, and I wound up, you know, working a match with him. But he was a really cool character. And to meet him before he passed away was a really cool thing for me, because I remember watching him when I was a kid, you know. That was really fun, really great times, man. I mean, we could tell wrestling stories all day long. Get Rip around here.
Well, I do want to think. So I went on your IMDb for this movie, and there was like a photo of, like, looks like a cover of a comic. Did you turn this into a comic too, or is that just something that was like promoted for this? You know,
Chris, go ahead.
Well, so we haven't turned it into a comic yet. We're contemplating kind of a graphic novel type of thing. But what happened was we, you know, unfortunately, in the world of independent filmmaking, you wind up with budgetary constraints no matter how big your budget is. And we had a nice budget for this film. We had kind of planned an opening that just at the end of the day was not financially feasible.
It was a time jump. And it was supposed to be a photo thing of us from like 89 to now. And it was supposed
all the way up until now.
But it didn't work. And
so our director, Max, who, you know, again, I can't say enough great things about what he did for us. He came up with this idea and had somebody do the artwork, and you know, said we'll make this into kind of a volume of because this was after we had shot everything. We'd been gone for like a month, so we were already planning on having a sequel in the works from filming, and so they made 2 different ones for basically, you know, the first and the second volume, and that's what you have seen. So yeah, it's pretty cool. I mean, you know,
it was a really genius idea. He called us up and he was like, hey, this isn't working. It's a disaster, but I got this idea. What if we have it take place inside a comic book? And me and Chris were like, oh man, that's awesome. He's like, do you think here's my idea. And he told us what he wanted, and we put our nose to the grindstone. In about 45 minutes, we came up with a whole different opening sequence. and we never changed a word of it. It worked, and the actors that do it for us just nail it, and they're hilarious. They're right at the beginning of the movie, and they're absolutely a stitch. But what the really cool thing was that because now that it took us into the world of a comic book for the second movie, we were really able to pull the pin on the reality grenade, because now there's no constraints. So nobody could say, how that wouldn't really happen. We're like, it's a comic book,
Yeah, exactly.
And the other super cool part, by the way, is we have our face on a comic book, which is like,
oh yeah,
that's tough to beat.
That's a huge deal, man. I mean, this is getting even better now. I love comics. I love wrestling. I love zombies. What else is there involved in this?
DB Sweeney. So DB Sweeney, the great actor from 8 Men Out, The Cutting Edge, what have you. He was friends with Max, but I had worked with him on a Spike Lee movie in Chicago, and we had made friends. And Max called him up, and he winds up playing the promoter. And he's amazing. He came with his own wardrobe that he got.
Yeah, he showed up with a toupee.
Oh my God. Totally like the character originally was a small character. When DB came on, we wanted to make it big for him. So Chris and I sat down, and the good thing about he and I is we're not inhibited. We just start throwing stuff at the wall, and stuff started to stick. And then he came in and had some suggestions, and he just took that thing and, A-lister that he is, blew it up completely. A lot of times when these guys who are stars come in to do these little movies, they phone it in or whatever, and they're just collecting a check. Nobody did that for us. Like when you see DB act, he is 100%. There's scenes in there where he's so good. And, I hope people notice he gets some recognition for it because he's so damn good. And Adrian Pasdar from Near Dark and Carlito's Way and a million other films. This guy's another
Heroes
actor. Yeah, right. Yes. He comes in, Heroes and Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. and all that. He comes in, and again, this was he plays the ring doctor, and it was a small little character. When we found out he was coming in, we're like, we got to give him something to do. So we made him a nitrous huffing, he's just really hilarious.
Fresh off a rehab doctor.
Yeah, he's hilarious. He's absolutely hilarious. And he winds up, actually, the three of us wind up teaming up later on in the film. And it worked out really great. So, and the great thing about Max as well, being a director, and, Chris and I come from wrestling, which is you have to improvise a lot. And I have a background in improvisational comedy. And Max was really good with the latitude that he gave everybody, the actors and all that, to sort of paint the characters with really broad strokes. So a lot of what you see was us like, hey, what if we did this? Hey, what if we did that? And a lot of directors don't do that because they want to get what they're going to get, and that's it. And with us, we played around a lot, and a lot of that comes on camera, and it really works. And I think you can see how much fun we're having doing it. So hopefully the early audiences that have seen the movie, the resounding thing was, hey, that was really fun. And that was our goal. We weren't trying to make anything socially relevant. We weren't trying to scare the shit out of
it. Just have fun.
Yeah,
that's exactly right.
If you go to see this or you watch it at home, and when it's done, you go, you know what? That was really damn fun. I'm glad I watched that. We're happy.
Very cool.
Goal hit.
Well, everyone, check out the Manson Brothers Midnight Zombie Massacre in theaters and on demand September 10th. I got to ask, though, I guess, are you selling the Manson Brothers shirts? You got one on.
Yeah. Hey. MansonBrothers.com.
There you go. You get shirts, coffee mugs, and posters. And there's a combo package. So.
Very cool.
Visit us.
Can you get signed copies of the movie poster by any chance?
Sure, absolutely.
Yeah, absolutely. Nice. Awesome.
It
may take us a little bit to send it back and forth because he's in LA and I'm in Chicago, but we can do it.
Well, I hope I could see this blowing up, and then hopefully you guys can be doing Comic-Con appearances around the country for this.
We hope
this comic comes together.
We did one in Chicago. We did a horror convention in Chicago at the beginning of the month, and it was just a big success for us. It was really great. Follow us on Instagram. I'm at Real Mike Carey, at C Margetis, at Manson Brothers the movie. Again, MansonBrothers.com. And I don't want to forget to mention that we have a code if you go on there, and it's Chris. What is it? What is it for the pre-sale?
We don't have the code yet, but as soon as we have it, we'll have it on the website.
For iTunes. There's a pre-sale for iTunes. You get half off or something like that, which is a really good deal. And we're trying to get as many pre-sale as we can. So that's great. Everybody just watch it. And if you love the movie, tell everybody. And if you don't, Don't say anything.
I don't. Well, something's wrong with you if you don't like this movie. I feel like
that's right.
You don't have a soul in your body. Before I let you go, anything for both of you guys? Anything coming up you're allowed to talk about before I let you go? Anything
sequel.
At all? Sequel.
Sequel. Wanted to let you know that Sting is one of my all-time favorite wrestlers, so I love the T-shirt.
And a hell of a guy.
I drove up to Jacksonville for when he finally first wrestled at that pay-per-view. Which one was that? So I actually put my makeup in Sting makeup.
Did you really?
Oh,
yeah,
nice.
dude. Because if you watch AEW back then, it's outside in the heat, so it was melting. But I don't care. That was awesome.
You want to hear? So you're a wrestling fan. You'll appreciate this story. When I first wrestled, this had to go back to 1993, almost 2003. So I had a chance to wrestle with one of the really great guys in the business, Dirty Dick Murdoch, who was Dusty Rhodes' partner as the Texas Outlaws and all that. And Dick, God rest his soul, was such a great guy. But he would get you in the ring and try and get you to laugh. So he would back you into a corner and tell jokes. He'd be like, "Hey kid, what's brown and sounds like a bell? Dung!" Or whatever. He would do that the whole time, and it was really, really, it was really funny. So I thought as a fan, you might appreciate a little inside baseball on that.
I love that.
Yeah, it was really funny.
Well, I could talk to you guys all day. Let's definitely talk in the future.
Let's do it again.
Definitely.
And definitely keep up the amazing work, guys. I appreciate it.